Not too bad. Oh my God! Eye bags and terrible. Not too bad. It's the 15th of November 2019 and you join me here in the car. Why in the car? Why is the 15th of November such an important date? I'll tell you, and I'll come out of this stupid voice. I passed my practical driving test a year ago to the day. In fact, I've got the report. How many of you have got those? And it says here 15:28 because that's just how they are. You know, 12 minutes past 9, 28 minutes past 3. I don't know why they do that, but I think it's just so they have some kind of power and control. You will turn up at this time. And I want to talk about what happened when I learnt to drive. I want to talk about what I've learnt since. I just want to basically have a talk. So if you can stand the course, it will go on. I will go off at a tangent. I've got to confess, this is the second take because I was 3 minutes into the first take and Sheila rang me up. I've got to literally do this video and then drive to London, to Putney, to pick Sheila up. And then turn round and drive all the way back to Norfolk. Because that's the loving guy I am. Even putting up with the fact that she lives in West London, in Putney, which is a lovely place to live. But unfortunately, getting there from the M11 means North Circular, terrible, or M25, terrible. And I'm going to be there picking her up around about 6 o'clock. Terrible timing. Oh, lovely. Anyway, let's talk about learning to drive, because someone I know on Facebook's just passed his theory test, so he'll be off and learning, you know, stuff. So, you know, you might find some interesting stuff. If you've been driving 30 years, you're probably going to be thinking, oh, God's sake, Robin. Because that's how it is. I'll talk to you about this as well. But let's start at the beginning. My first ever lesson took place in North London. I went on Google. I typed in North London driving schools. And I found the cheapest. I rang up the chap. Nigerian he was. And he said, well, I can come round tonight. This was in the summertime. And give you a practical test lesson. I thought, well, that's good. He came round. He wanted cash in hand at the doorstep. I gave him the money. He put it in his wallet. I thought, well, this is a bit dodge. 13-year-old red Nissan Micra with the front number plate hanging off. Terrible wheel alignment. Yeah, told the steering wheel just off centre to go straight down. It's raining, as you can hear. And I wasn't looking in my mirrors. I didn't know what to do, but he was praising me because I'd figured out within 30 seconds pretty much how to use the clutch and change gear and everything else. And we were off out down the A10 up to Great Cambridge roundabout, all round the side streets, main roads, you name it. He was loving it. I was hating it. And that is in such contrast to my first lesson in Norwich, which was an intensive lesson, because I took an intensive course. I'll talk about that in a moment, where in that first 2.5 hours, I don't think I really took the wheel. So anyway, my second set of lessons was with the AA, with an Indian lady who really loved to text her husband about what was happening in the evening, what dinner was going to be done and all that kind of stuff, whilst trying to teach me to drive. And several times we'd arrive at a junction, she'd look up from her phone and go, oh, we're here. And I'd have to ask, well, what way do you want me to go? So I wasn't feeling very confident in learning to drive in London. So I decided I'll leave London, buy a boat, come to Norwich and learn to drive here. And everybody said, oh, you're breezy up here. No, let me tell you something. People are scared of London traffic. Don't be scared of London traffic. It crawls along at 15 miles an hour. You've got so much time to read signs, take in your sat-nav and whatever. You've got 3/4 mile to get into the left-hand lane. If you're in Norwich and it's cruising along nicely at 30, you've got to make much quicker decisions and check your mirrors and everything else. You've got to do it much snappier to keep up with the flow of traffic and stuff. So I found that more of a challenge, to be perfectly honest, than I did in London. So I've already been going on for nearly 5 minutes. You can tell this is going to be a long video. So I learned to drive, as I say, doing an intensive course. And I must just stop here because, stop me, You must be kidding. I learnt to drive on an automatic. So my first lessons in London were in a manual, because it had been drilled into me, you've got to learn to drive in a manual. You've got to. And then I thought, I don't want to learn to drive in a manual. Not because I had issues with changing gear and all this kind of stuff, or the clutch. I'm a lazy so-and-so. And if I've got to move my left leg all the bloody time, and move my hand all the bloody time, and there's an alternative way called D and go, I'm taking the alternative way. And to be honest with you, seriously, I think we're probably, let's just stop on the whole autonomous driving and electric cars taking over the world and everything else. Hybrids are automatics. Electrics are automatics. New trucks, HGVs, they're all automatics. Buses, they're all automatics. Coaches, they're all automatics. We are going to have, I can feel it, 5 years time maybe, 10 years tops, that there's going to be a news item that will say the last manual car has come off the production line on to be registered in the UK. It's going to happen. The manual car and the clutch is going to be a thing of history. Now, once upon a time, if you were learning to drive 20 years ago, 30 years ago, automatic cars generally were crap. They were slower, really inefficient, 3-speed box, maybe if you had a nice one with overdrive or stuff. So things have come on so much, and so many cars, come only as automatics. You can't get a manual a lot of the time nowadays. So things have really changed. So I don't see the whole learning to drive in an automatic a problem, because you're fine. You're with the future if you're learning to drive in an automatic. So that's my opinion. Anyway, so basically I failed my first test because of well, let me explain. When I was learning to drive, my instructor told me time and time again, you must stop an amber light. Don't think, oh, I can get through it, it's not gone red yet. And you damn well must stop during your test if the light goes amber. So I was like, oh my god, yeah, no. And there were a few times when we approach a set of traffic lights, and they'd go amber, and she'd go, oh, just got through there, Robin, you've got to be more prepared, that they're going to change. And I was like, oh god, okay. So come the test day, we leave the centre, go around a roundabout, down another bit of road, there's a huge big junction. And as we're approaching the junction, there's nothing behind me, there's nothing in front of me, and the lights are green. But I thought they've been green all the way that we've come from that roundabout up this hill. They're probably going to change. And yet they weren't. And the closer I was getting, the closer I was getting. And suddenly it went amber. And I went, oh, I'm going to brake. I didn't actually say that to the examiner. Like, oh, I'm going to brake. Prepare yourself. But I braked quite hard and stopped. But as I hit the brakes, as that traffic light went amber, the examiner said to me, go, go, go. Now, examiners are supposed to sit there quietly with a pen and their clipboard and allow you to make mistakes. If you're going to make a dangerous mistake and they have to intervene, they will, and you obviously automatically fail your driving test. But to be told to go through an amber light was so completely different to everything I'd been taught. So I stopped, went on with the rest of the test, got back to the test centre, and he said, do you want your instructor in the car to hear the result? And I said yes, and she got in, and he said, you failed, and she was like, oh, because I passed my mock with one minor, which I can't remember what that was now. It was something so tiny. She said to me, I've just got to do something. I can't just say, the only thing I can find a fault was with whatever. So anyway, well, why did he fail? Well, he went through an amber light. And he said, and I said to him, go, and she was like, you said, it was just weird. She'd never heard anything like it before. I was like, it's me, this is what happens. And that's what happened. So I have some extra lessons, and I booked in for the second test, and I get to the test. And so the first test was in the morning, first test, and this test, 15:28, was at the end of the day kind of thing. So C. Turner was his name. It's got it on here, Mr. C. Turner. Sounds like a horrible name. It sounds like that one of those, like, oh, do you remember back in school, C. Turner, the maths teacher, the perv? He sounds like one of them, innit? Mr. Turner. So eyed him again. The same bloody examiner. I mean, she was like, you're not going to get him. You know, it just doesn't happen. I'm in the test centre and the people are being called forward. And literally, they were all disappearing. And I was like, bloody hell. Because I booked this one. I thought, did I've got the right date? Oh my God, you know. He comes out with the words, Mr. Shepherd, we meet again. And I was like, God, it's you again. So, I'm nervous. It's him again. He asks me, because you've got to fill this in. You've got to fill your details in. And then you've got to sign it. And I signed it in the wrong place. And he was frustrated. Because he had to go back to the office and get another form and fill it in and have me sign it in the right place. Well, after all this faffing around, then we came out to the car, got in the car. He said, well, there's no time for sat-nav. Because, and that's another thing now, when you learn to drive, you've got to do a period of time following sat-nav directions. The reason I understand this is simple, because when you're learning to drive and the sat-nav tells you to do something, you're used to your, you know, instructor telling you to do something. You kind of listen to the sat-nav as if it's the all-encompassing, you know, goddess. And you're not. You mustn't just rely on it solely. It's there to give you a hand. So, but they put a lot of focus into that and not a lot of focus into street sign. So he said, well, we can't do this sat nav, we haven't got time. We're just going to have to follow the signs. So off we set, up to the same set of traffic lights, which were green, and went through. I thought, well, we've gone further than we did before. He starts chatting away to me. The examiner, again, he's not supposed to be there chatting away. What made you come up to this area then, Robin? You know, what did you do in London and all this kind of stuff? And in the end, I literally said to him, look, I'm sorry. Can we just concentrate on the driving? Because, you know, he was putting me off, and he did follow the signs towards Cromer. And then he said, okay, that ends that follow the signs. Now, when you're doing your examination, there will be one manoeuvre. So if you're going to do like parallel parking and you've done parallel parking, you know you're not going to be asked, for example, to do a bay park or you know, another manoeuvre like an emergency stop. And it's the same with sort of following the signs or, you know, doing the sat nav. You're not going to do sat nav and then later on in the test do more sat nav because you've done that. That's not with me. It was follow the signs, follow his instructions, and then I want you to follow the signs again. And it went on. The average test lasts about 45 minutes. 45 minutes. Mine was about an hour. So anyway, I had... how many faults? 1. Lane discipline. That happened on the NDR roundabout, where I was in the 3 lanes on approach. I was in the first lane, and as I was halfway around the roundabout, my rear wheel was on the white line. As I went round, I wasn't quite absolutely in my lane, so I got a minor for that. And I passed. So there we go. And I didn't realise what passing would mean to me. It changed everything. Not always for the best, because I don't know if I've said already, but after I've done this video, literally, it's off to London. I'm going to pick up Sheila, who lives in Putney, which is in West London, which is a lovely place, but it does mean I have to get on the A406, aka the North Circular, from the bottom of the M11 all the way to West London, and with the closure of Hammersmith Bridge, that's just beautiful getting to Putney, or I go on the M25, both of which are terrible. And I've got to pick her up around about 6 o'clock, which is peak rush hour. Great timing. And then literally turn around and drive all the way back up here. So what I've discovered since learning to drive is that beautiful thing of freedom and independence. And I think a lot of teenagers that learn to drive when they're younger, even if they're sort of not, 17, maybe they're 19, 20, 21, they could be in their group the first that has passed, the first that has got a car. Not only does that give them a great deal of freedom, but it also means they can have bragging rights. I've got a car, I can learn to drive. You can't. So their friends want to come in the car. So it elevates someone. And even though I was 39 when I learned to drive, which is late to the party, growing up living in London, I didn't need to learn to drive. I didn't get a car to go to work, because what's the problem? Not the problem. What's the point? I'm working in central London. I'm hardly going to drive into the congestion zone, and put up with that. And then come weekends, you'd sort of think, well, what do I need the car for? All the things I'm doing and places I'm going, it's just easier just to walk down to the tube station and get on the tube. And drivers would think to me, like coming up to the Broads, hiring boats, you're crazy. You bring all this luggage with you and heavy case and on the train, and you just go, yeah, well, I've got to. It's a bit like being an only child. Oh, don't you get lonely not having siblings? No. Well, you got freedom. And you just get used to all of this, lugging stuff around. And it doesn't really bother you when you're doing it. You don't stop and think, oh, God, why am I doing this? But when you learn to drive and get a car, you just stop doing it. You go, what? I did that for how long? So it's completely changed my whole perception of freedom and life. And also what I think's different about me is that a lot of people learn to drive, and they got the freedom, but they'll go to McDonald's or they go to Tesco's or whatever. They cruise around their local neighbourhood. Whereas with me, when I learned to drive and I got the car, I was like, right, my first solo drive was from Wisbech to Norwich. That ended up the last part of it being at night, which was the first time at night in the rain. Well, I'd not driven at night in the rain before, so that was interesting. But after that, I would often think, oh, I've got to go pop into town for something, and I think, I'll get the train. And I say, no, Robin, don't get the train, drive. If it's raining, get in the car and drive. If it's misty in the morning, get up quick, get out there and experience it. Last year it snowed. Get out in the snow and experience it. I want to be there. I want to experience it. And I want to push myself so I'm not nervy and confronted with things that I haven't done before. And then that, in turn, began to be, well, what's there? What's, on the map? Looking at places and what's there. And so I've driven all over. I've been, to the West Country and North Wales and South Wales. I've been up to Aberdeen and North Yorkshire. Today's going to be London, a regular trip of mine. And so combined mileage in the first year, I worked it out last night, has been 17,036, rings a bell, miles. Now that's not, to some people, like, oh my God, you've done 17,000 miles. Oh, well, for my... But yes, a lot of people drive more than that. But that'd be for their driving to work. They might have a long commute to go to work. They might do lots of miles for their job. Or a combination of both. But just literally what I say, wonder miles, which is, I wonder what's there, let's go. I think 17,000 miles is in the first year of driving, is quite a lot. I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Whatever it is, I bought this car with 24,000 and something, and it's just clocked over 40,000 miles. So, and then that's not including the miles I've done in the other car. So I've experienced an awful lot in a kind of condensed period of time, and I've seen an awful lot of idiots out there. And that's the funny thing about drivers and driving. I've never actually talked to anyone who says, I'm a terrible driver. Not happened yet. Which is unusual, because there are so many terrible drivers on the roads. And the issue is, I think, that as a driver, you learn to drive, you get over the hump of getting your practical test done, and whatever you then do, so if you've got bad habits creeping in, that just becomes your norm. And I've tried so hard that since learning to drive, to not have those bad habits creep in. And if they start to, oh, I know I can do this, I sort of have a little word to myself and say, no, don't do that. Because if you start doing that, then you'll just be one of them. And I take an awful lot of pride in how I drive and the smoothness that I drive, and how a lot of the sort of roadcraft and rules of the road really do go together. And if everybody did stick to them, it would be so much easier. My two biggest pet hates, and I remember my dad having this, and this was back in the 80s and 90s, is centre lane hoggers on motorways. I think that has got so much worse now, because people, when they're learning to drive, they don't know about motorways. And it's only last year that learner drivers with a qualified instructor and a dual control car can now go on motorways, which I think is a good thing. But there's an awful lot of people out there who drive in the middle lane and they don't see anything wrong with that at all. Because if you want to overtake them, you may do so. But that's not the point. If you were in the, inside lane, I wouldn't have to overtake you like this. I could just come up, pull out, overtake, and the first, guy that's coming past here, it just works like a ballet with cars moving in and everything else. And you check and you make sure, you indicate, you pull out, you overtake, you move back in again. And everybody does this and it works great. But when people don't, it all falls apart. The other thing, and this is bigger than middle lane hoggers, that I found is, doesn't matter if it's dual carriageway or a motorway, either way, you know that there's going to be, cars joining at the next junction down the slip road. You know this because there's signs to tell you this. If everybody looked at signs and knew what they meant as well. So what happens is, first of all, when you're joining a dual carriageway or a motorway, it is up to you to give way to the traffic already on there. But of course, who listens to that? I put my I'm turning right, come what may indication on, and they expect to join, come what may. The other thing that happens is the person in that inside lane who's been driving along and should have known that this was going to happen. It's not an unusual event. Oh, look, there's a slip road. Oh, there's cars. Yes, they're going to want to join. Is the guy in the inside lane going to ease up a bit and let them join? No, of course not, because he's just going to go, I'm coming out. So you're now coming past him, overtaking him, and he suddenly goes, I'm coming. Oh, bloody hell, there's a car there. Because how many people indicate and then look instead of look and indicate? And indicate and then look turns into indicate, move and look at the same time. Oh, there's a car there. So that's what gets me, and I just don't do that. If I can't move out because there's another car there and there's cars about to join, then I will just slow up a bit, let them join, sort themselves out, right? Then I'll overtake. Oh, it took me 20 seconds extra. Big deal. So they're my two moans, the biggest moans of anything else, that repeat themselves time and time and time again. But in all of that time of driving, I've learned, obviously, a lot of new things, and I'm a bit fastidious, just like my old dad was with keeping things polished and clean on the inside. And this car just passed its MOT, but when I bought this car, which was a low mileage, 450 I think it had on it, I went and had all the brakes, the discs and the pads changed, and I had a full service, even though it didn't require one. And then since that, I've been keeping everything clean under the engine, So if you see an oil leak or a coolant leak or something, you'll notice it straight away because, oh, what's that there? Where's that come from? If it's all dirty and grubby under there, well, it's dirty and grubby. That bit of oil Well, you know, has it been there recently? Was it there 6 months ago? What the hell? And the same with the other little SLK. And you know, just doing things like that, and then when the colder weather's coming and you change your screen wash to a winter one that has a lower freezing point, and just checking your wiper blades and stuff like this, it's all those little things that kind of make me at least feel a bit more prepared, and having spare oil and spare coolant in the car and an air compressor and you know, a torch and stuff just in case. You don't know what's going to happen. And I have broken down the water pump seized in this car, ripped all the serpentine belts apart, and I had insurance cover, which I've since upgraded to a green flag because I didn't really like the way it worked, in honesty. But you know, being able to pull over and be calm and understand things, and you know, you see so many people now on hard shoulders of dual carriageways, but especially motorways, and you think, are you really broken down? Are you just stopping because you need a piss? You know, that sort of respect, I think, a lot of that came from me dad, you know, where you would only go on the hard shoulder if it really was an emergency. And they're dangerous places, hard shoulders. And again, a lot of this isn't taught to you when you're learning to drive, and if you don't have someone that is a bit more fastidious for the rules, you might not necessarily grow up and do it yourself. And you know, by not keeping an eye on things with the car and stuff, then you're encouraging something to go wrong before it, in other words, before it is preventable, it goes wrong. Now, you can't know that your water pump's going to go. That's just because it's a crap BMW and that's what they do. If you want reliability, you buy a Toyota. If you want performance and feel and stuff, but issues, you buy a BMW. And if you want neither performance or reliability, you buy a Mercedes. So that's what I've learned. But yes, I mean, I must admit, I've really enjoyed my first year of motoring. I've seen a load of places that I would never have otherwise seen. There's a load more I want to go to, and I'm thinking about a little bit of a trip down to Dover and on a cross channel and a bit into France. Maybe just dab my feet into continental driving and see how it goes, and then go, oh, quick, run back to England. Or maybe not. Maybe, you know, oh, I'm driving, it says, you know, wherever, 300 kilometres, oh, carry on going kind of thing. That's probably the sort of person I am. So there are sort of ideas and things. But, one thing before I go, I must admit, these things here are considered, I think, in the general motoring elite, as what the hell do you need one of those for? You know, that's what you have when you're learning to drive. And I had this when I was learning to drive, and when I learned to drive, I thought, well, I'll get a couple of these, and I put them on the mirror, and they have become such a handy tool, safety-wise, in London. You kind of just, through your peripheral vision, you can see a bike coming up your inside, you know, cyclist, so much earlier and quicker, because the big mirrors won't capture them because they're so close to your car in your blind spot. And the other real benefit is bay parking. When you're backing into a bay, you'll see where the bays are, the painted white lines, straight away. No need to worry. Just there, we're bang on in the middle, done. So pound they underselling, 2 for £1. They're all right, actually. Otherwise, Halfords, they're quite expensive for what you get. These are fancy ones that kind of rotate, and you can adjust the angle and things. I don't like them because they're quite chunky. But if you are driving, get them for £1, put them on, and then you'll be surprised, I think, what a handy little tool, even just one on your driver's mirror, these are, in comparison to not having them. And then you might regard them as, but actually I think they're a really useful aid to driving. So I'm going to go now. It's half an hour, this video. And thank you for watching. I look forward to another year of trouble-free driving, because I think I've escaped my first speeding fine when I was driving along at night in the car, and it was a 50-mile-an-hour stretch of road that came to a 40. Now, I have on the Mercedes a speed limiter that you dial in, let's say 40 mile an hour, and the car will not do more than 40 mile an hour. And in fact, if you're doing 50 and you dial in 40, it will brake you physically without you touching the brakes to 40 mile an hour. The BMW also has a speed limiter function, so this is separate to cruise control, by the way. So you still use the accelerator, it's just it will go to whatever you've set it. So I dial in 40, but in the BMW it doesn't brake you. And I was chatting away to Sheila about what we were going to have for dinner, and she was a bit moody and stuff, you know, because we'd gone to Chedgrave on the bus to pick up, no, we'd gone in the BMW to pick up the Mercedes from the garage where it had not been repaired, brought it back here, then got a train to Norwich and then a bus to Chedgrave, and then we picked up the BMW to go and drive back home again. Why didn't we just go once in the bus and pick up the Mercedes and come back? Because I picked up Sheila before from the station, so I already had her, and there wouldn't be enough time to go back, get the bus and pick everything up before the dealer that was doing the work on the car, which they didn't do, closed. So it's late, she's had a long journey, and I'm saying, well, do you want to go to Frankie and Benny's, or do you want to go to Fatso's, or do you want to go for a curry? And she's like, I just want some food. And she said, well, you're going to slow down for this speed camera. And I looked up, and it was a forward-facing infrared one, no flash, and the white line was you know, feet away. And I looked down, and we were doing like 43, 44, and I braked as we went over the line, and I looked at the GPS speedo, and it was like 40, and I thought, I cannot believe that we went over that white line at 40. But I haven't had a horrible brown letter come in the post, and if I haven't now, you have to have 2 weeks. If they come outside the 2 week period, it's not valid, so it has to be in 2 weeks. I did, however, get a parking fine in Wells next to the sea at 8:39 in the evening. Not through an ANPR camera. This was apparently stuck on my windscreen, PCN issued at 8:39 in the evening. So that's interesting, but that's the only sort of penalty that I've got. Was there anything else I wanted to say? Yes, insurance. So unfortunately, what happened with me is obviously as a new driver, the insurance you get on cars is astronomical. It doesn't matter what you do. Now, because it's a little bit better when you're a bit older than when you're younger, but really it's about age and it's about experience. So I'm older, but I have no experience. So when I first was getting quotes, they were bad enough. And what happened is that I would look on Go Compare and stuff and go like, well, what happens in year 2? So if I've had my license for 2 years, 3 years, I thought, well, it's all good. For the first 4.5, 5 years, my premiums are going to go down as my experience goes up, as long as I don't make any claims, kind of thing. So I thought, well, that's pretty good. So my first issue with insurance was when I had a provisional license. I was insured as a provisional license holder on the car, which is kind of strange. Not many people own a car and insure themselves on the car as a provisional license holder. Then I passed my test and got a full license, and then I told the insurance company a little bit later than I should have done that I'd now passed my test and got a full license, at which point my license went through the roof. It went from like 783 quid to 1,300 quid, and I was like, what? I've suddenly gone from a no. The reason is that as a provisional driver, legally, you've got to have someone who's a qualified driver in the passenger seat with you. I wonder if that's the law, they have to be in the passenger seat, or if they have to be in the vehicle with you. I just wondered what you would do if this was in the back seat or something. Anyway, that's on the side. And because now you're qualified driver yourself, you're on your own, but you're new, inexperienced, therefore higher risk. So yeah, it went up to 1,300 quid with a £3,000 excess. Nice. So I thought, but don't worry, because when I come to change the policy, to renew it, I will then have a year's of experience with no claims. So I come to renew it, but because in that period of time I changed my driving licence because I moved from London, so I changed the address. And when I had my new driving licence issued, it had a different start date from June. So when I was then looking to renew my insurance, and they asked for a copy of my documentation, see, because I said it's changed, I've changed my address. Oh, we'll charge you 50 quid processing fee because you've changed your address. Yeah, thanks for that. Can we have a copy of your driving licence as well? Yes, of course. Sent them a scan. Oh, your driving licence starts in June. So now I've been put back again. But now I found out legally that's wrong, because on the back of the driving licence, it shows what date you passed to drive that class of vehicle, not when the license was issued. So you might have a license that was issued in June for car driving, but then you took an HGV test 2 years later, so your license would still say June 2019, for example, but 2 years down the road you've passed your HGV license. Your license will still say when it was started from, but on the back it will say HGV class whatever from whenever. But of course, when I found this out and I contacted the insurers, I'm sorry, sir, you've already started your renewal. We can't change anything now. You've paid your money and you've got your insurance now for the next year. So, brilliant. And without any claims or anything, and despite a no claims discount, my insurance still went up. Because I drive one of the most prone to be stolen cars in the country. You often see about, Defenders getting nicked and everything else. You don't see so much Facebook posts about, oh, my BMW's been nicked, because who wants to give any care to that? So, yes, very high premiums for this car. Not as much for the SLK, despite being faster to 60 and faster top speed, and, it's because it's an older car that's not very interested in nicking, I suppose. And I keep looking at Volvo V70s. I don't know why. And then this bloke test drove one, and it was a really nice example from 2004, and he paid 450 quid for it, and it was lovely. And I thought, so I might get myself a Volvo V70 and add to the fleet, because that's how I am. But I'm really trying not to. Don't worry, Mum. Don't worry, Mum. You won't. I hope you won't have me turn up and say, right, can I just leave this car in your driveway on the battery charger, because now I'm going to go and drive a Volvo for 6 months. But no, I think driving has opened my eyes incredibly, and has been a wonderful experience, and it's taken me away from boats. I think boating and cruising was my independence, my driving, before I learnt to drive, and now I can learn to drive instead of being restricted to 125 miles of lock-free waterways on the northern and southern Norfolk Broads and Suffolk Broads. I've got this country and the continent to explore now, which seems so much more exciting. So I've got to get off, and I've got to get going, and head off down to London, pick Sheila up. But thank you for watching if you've put up with this for 39 minutes or nearly 40. It's been interesting. I don't know when this is going to get uploaded, because this video is going to take ages to upload from my mobile to YouTube. But we'll see. And I can't do it over the mobile data. I'll do it on my Wi-Fi. So anyway, thanks for watching. And if you've just passed, gonna pass, learning or driving for 30 years, don't lose that kind of excitement. I know that roads are boring and being stuck in traffic's boring for 99.99% of the population, unless you're me, who gets stopped on like the M25 and goes, that's interesting road surface they've used there. That's a bit different to the last one that we were stopped up against there, and you know, that kind of thing. So traffic jams just don't really bother me. Quite like them actually. But what bothers me the worst is slow traffic that's moving. Just stop or go fast, but slow moving. That's what is my most hated thing, you know. And when I'm talking about slow, I'm like 10 mile an hour. You're just like literally creeping along. And people at night who leave their brake lights on. This car has an auto hold feature, and when it stops, it puts the brakes on and it holds the car and it leaves the brake lights on. Whereas I will stop and think, oh, I'm going to be stuck in a bit of traffic for a while. I'll put the auto handbrake on and that turns the brake lights off. And I do that just out of politeness to the person behind, to not dazzle them with my bright brake lights. Just what I'm like. How many people out there think about that? I do. But it is nicer when people don't. But people don't. People don't do it. Because so many people now have auto hold or electronic parking brakes. They don't have the parking, you know, handbrake. What's that about? I'll just keep my foot on the brake. Anyway, I've gone on long enough. That wasn't the intention, but I knew it was going to happen anyway.